where that brings us back to your point, James, is that if we establish that this is, oh, I just had a place number there already. If we establish that this is going to be a challenging quest for third level players, we know approximately what power rating to set our reward, our material reward for. Which brings us back to your previous point. And it might be something that is themed towards mind flayers or aberrations. I don't know if like we want to feature like a magic item that the party acquires or something as a reward. Kind of geared towards those attributes. Or what did you have in mind as a material reward?
Well, I mean, it didn't even have to be a material reward. It'd just be the promise of it. I mean, if it's a one-shot, it's...
Well, ideally this could be a one-shot, or you could literally plug this into any adventure.
I'm thinking on it.
So assuming it's a one-shot, maybe we have the material reward, like a magic weapon or something, that is achievable like mid-quest, and could actually be useful during the quest, or the final encounter. And if it's just plugged into another adventure, then hey, you get to keep it after the end anyways, so...
I think the biggest problem though that I think is kind of the point is just the why are the heroes getting involved, I guess. And saving a child, yes. I feel like since it's a one shot, you could always argue that it's connected to a player and that it's somebody that they know or related or.
You weren't necessarily stressing an actual material reward so much as you were saying, what's the motivation for the players to be involved?
Yeah. So if it's like part of if it's part of an adventuring like a campaign or an overall campaign, it needs to be like some sort of reward or some sort of like association with it.
What are the stakes? I follow you now. Okay. I think I heard you say something, and I thought you meant something else. Well, here's some ideas, and you guys feel free to crank any out you got yourselves. So this will be kind of like establishing event. Where's my... Okay, that's the adventure. This is our adventure primer. Adventure setting, Badlands, faction, NPCs. We'll get around to them. Okay, so our inciting event. Okay, here's some ideas. I'm just going to fire them out, bounce them off. Let's say the person looking for his daughter, or it could be anybody. I just figured like a lost daughter would perhaps be something players would be more inclined to say, well, let's go look for her and help her out. Damsel in distress type thing. But it could be anybody. Let's say that the person looking for his lost daughter or runaway daughter is, if we go the cultist route, maybe he kidnaps somebody important to the party. One. Or two, it's a lord from a surrounding area, and he's willing to just pay a mass sum of money. One's a little bit more typical cliche, tropey. The other is a little bit more like party invested. Now, the one where it's like somebody important to the player has been kidnapped, that kind of already puts the players in like a skeptical mood when they arrive in the village, which, I don't know, kind of like throw off the like impeding doom that like you don't really see coming with it being a horror themed thing. Also with the kidnap, it requires work on the part of the DM to make that person, to choose somebody relevant to the party. Do you follow me?
So I think in some ways, maybe at least from my own view, another way you could set it up is you could have the party coming upon this town naturally as a rest spot, or they're traveling to another place and it just happens to be in the middle of the place, and then you can set up a couple of hooks there, like like you could have it to where like they need shelter or something like that, and they have to do someone a favor, which leads them deeper into the town's mystery. Like, and other like you set up that sort of paranoia style that way. Well, if you have like if they're looking for
What's that film? It's called The Village or something. Where there's like a, I want to say they dress up as like monsters in that case, but it's kind of like there's a deep secret.
Yeah, it's the village. Yeah, something like that could be interesting.
Okay, I feel you. So we have um, questionable dude has a runaway daughter. We have it's a lord willing to pay a large sum of money. We have the players stumbling into this unassuming village, unaware of the danger. I like that. Um, we could also couple that with like a questionable events that keep the players there, and until they address the problem.
yeah, I mean,
Like they're unwilling to let the players depart.
or there's a bad storm or something like that.
Not quite Silent Hilly, but like that's a possible as well.
Or there's a bad storm, or like one of the bridges that they have to cross is washed out nearby, or something like that, where they have to stay in the town until something like allows them to continue.
Okay, so out of those options, let's go ahead and just pick one, nail it down, and move on to the next thing. What do we like the best? Unassumingly enter the town and are unable to leave? Is that kind of what we're leaning on?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one to go with.
Okay, so we have how we get there, how we start. Do we have any notes with the general layout of how I kind of envisioned this quest? Other than the inciting event? We're still cool with like the Jonestown type cult, the secret plot, the worshipping of the Oblex, feeding it people, luring people into that. We're more or less all still on board with that concept.
Yeah, I'd say maybe put a little more focus on whoever the cult leader is, just a little bit, just to kind of create a secondary villain.
I feel you. Which leads us to our next segue point now that we've established our inciting event. We can either try and nail down some setting details like environment, atmosphere, um, architecture, mood, or do you guys want to try and nail down some descriptive elements of the town of Dunwich? Or, from what you were saying, do we want to jump to NPCs and factions and start to nail down our primary villain, the cult leader? Because while the Oblex is going to be like the menacing, like elder creature, I really think that the cult leader, being cogent and intelligent, would probably be the actual villain. Because this is all like a result of his machinations and propaganda. Where are we at?
I mean, yeah, the cult leader should be the primary villain, and then you have the Oblets as the second, sort of the boss fight, but sort of in the shadows.
Cult leader. Let's come up with a name or a character concept. Rely on any media that strikes you as inspirational. Um, I mean, my go-to inspiration for this was learning about the Jonestown massacre. Like I'd always heard the like don't drink the Kool-Aid comments. I was not really aware until last year like what the historical aspect of that was, and found out all about the Jonestown massacre. And it kind of inspired me in like that. I always kind of wondered why cults in video games or RPGs were like really like thin, not a lot of complexity, not a lot of depth, and they were all pretty generic. I was like, I want to do like a horror cult setting, and I want it to really have some depth and character. You follow?
Yeah.
So I definitely want, if we have only one fantastic NPC with some depth, I think it needs to be this cult leader because he's basically like the key to all of this is his charisma. If you follow me.
Hmm.
So who do we want to rely on as inspiration? Any uh, interesting characters from movies, film, or video games as like a start point?
I probably should have dropped that in the podcast chat, but I dropped it in the workshop chat. Um, I dropped the image of the Wicker Man villain just to kind of give a little look.
I would say base it on your setting, like the setting you have in the world. Trying to base it off of like,
The theme I have in mind, but we can go with anything. That's why I have you guys here. I was thinking of kind of like a Transylvanian type setting. Dark, moody. My diction fails me right
I would say base it off of, what's that D&D setting that's in that,
Oh, I've been wanting to do a campaign in it for a while. Now I've lost the name, but Curse of Strahd setting, that one,
yes.
Ravenloft.
now. Okay.
Yeah.
So we want it to be a
Because
villain.
if you're in for Transylvania and D&D, Ravenloft is it.
Standard human, and just making him totally threatening out of sheer charisma. If you follow.
I mean, the thing about the cult leader, what makes them scary is their followers, the hold they have on the followers rather than like necessarily the cult leader himself. So like you could have the frailest cult leader and it's more just his connections and stuff like that to the rest of the community. So really what it becomes is that the cult leader is just a figurehead. It's really just a sense of rawness of the community rather than just an individual is what makes a cult terrifying in that sense.
Okay. If I could capture that in a single statement that we can always come back to whenever we're adding more to this character, how would you wrap that up? The cult's power is derived from its community more so than the individual. Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah, because a cult leader kind of isn't effective without people who are willing to listen.
And the source of that power isn't so much that they fear the cult leader, but they fear the um, blind servitude of the other followers.
A lot of it, well, in terms of the followers themselves, they fear more of what would happen if they're no longer part of the group.
Yeah, I had a little bit to speak to this, and I'll go back to it real quick. There are few who dissent, but they dare not speak against their leader and are very unlikely to reveal any plot, though they may act suspiciously. So they have fear. I just kind of want to work out the psychology of this cult, because that's going to be really what powers this story.
Well, sorry. Historically, a lot of them tend to not really fear the leader himself. They tend to be more afraid of the perceived backlash of returning and being kind of kicked out of the group, if anything. They fear more of the idea of no longer being part of the cult, usually.
Kind of like a flock mentality. Without the flock, you shall perish.
Yeah, because that tends to be what a lot of cults tend to use as their main idea is that, hey, you need us because we provide this, and if you don't have us anymore, you're out of luck.
Okay. Now that is kind of like the realistic psychological element. However, this is also an RPG, and in this scenario, we have an elder entity that reanimates wholly believable replicas of people they feed to it. Let's try and let's try to psych this out a little bit. How this would influence these people and their leader. Um, the fact that they worship this Oblex uh, and feed it their loved ones, so that way they'll quote unquote like be with them forever. Obviously, they would protect this Oblex with like everything they have. Like that might be a good source of power for them as well. Any thoughts?
I'm thinking on it. Oh, part of me is like, hmm.
So I have absolute faith in the nature of the Oblex to immortalize their loved ones. They will defend it with their lives and even sacrifice themselves if needed to ensure its survival. Now, obviously, I think this also kind of goes with a bit of propaganda in the sense that, like, no one really understands the Oblex, which is why they don't fear it or haven't, like, destroyed it or tried to get rid of it. I think this all kind of had to start with this individual that discovered the Oblex, maybe fed it a loved one, realized its power, shared that power with others, and that's how the cult seeded and grew, which is like the thing that binds them all is this experience. With their lives, they sacrifice themselves again. I kind of like that element because I was kind of imagining towards like the end of the climax of the battle, if it looks like the Oblex is going to die, like the cult leader would just like issue the order, and then everybody would just kind of like throw themselves into it and just be absorbed, and it just turns into this even more massive, grotesque abomination. Are we getting stuck on
So I think maybe like if reading more on the Oblets and like what it does, I think it's better to create an atmosphere of paranoia than Oblets. Because if you're doing a cult leader and sacrifice for gain, that feels more like your traditional like pact with a devil or a demon or something like that.
I wasn't necessarily
For
going for sacrifice for gain. I was going like they sacrifice um more with respect to like the fear of loss. Like this
I
is
mean, you could use a.
their like channel to immortality is this Oblex.
I would say like a necromancer would probably be right because I think with an Oblets, it's more like you. I think if you come to a town like I guess the best analogy is like the synths in Fallout 4 is the idea is that like you can't trust your even your spouse because you don't know if your spouse is actually is actually that person or if it's like a mimic. I mean that's the reason why mimics are terrifying in D&D is that
I hadn't even considered the paranoia component.
yeah because I mean, it's just like mimics in D&D. Whenever you go to a treasure chest, it's like, oh, it maybe it's a treasure chest or it could be a mimic. And you create that sense of paranoia. But with an Oblex, instead of material objects being that uh, paranoia you have about, is now people in the town. And so if you're coming there as outsiders, not knowing the situation, not knowing who's who, you don't know who to trust. And the town doesn't even know to trust you also.
Are you pitching
And so you can,
paranoia for the town people who are participating,
for everyone.
or are you more or
No,
less like this is going to be a lot of good paranoia potential for the players?
for the players and the town. Like,
I feel
so
like
the town,
more dedicated townies who are like in on it probably wouldn't mind. In fact, it feels kind of like ascendant to them. But others who
well,
are less like bought into it. Those might be the paranoid people who you can kind of get on
Well, I
the
don't know.
of like spilling the beans or something.
Well, I don't know what the Oblux's agenda is. Like, and that's part of it is that like
The only agenda is to consume, right? So like it's totally what's I'm looking for here. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to answer your questions so we can get on a page here.
Hey everyone, thank you for checking out the video. If you enjoyed what you just saw, be sure to give us a like, comment, and subscribe. If you don't want to miss any of our content, be sure to hit the bell icon where you will be notified anytime we upload a video. Also, if you wish to watch RPG Workshop live, you can follow Studio Bastion on Twitch. There you can also enjoy his gameplay live streams and other podcasts that are in production. Also, if you like what we're doing here at Escape Reality Films, be sure to check out our Patreon and support us, and get some cool rewards in return.